I'd like to call to order the March 23rd, 2021 Board of Public Safety meeting to order. Do I have a motion to approve the February 16th, 2021 minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
If we could have Nicole please take the roll.
Yeah, I can do that. Kim,
Yes.
Luis,
Yes.
Shruti,
Yes.
I would also like to certify that the board conducted an executive session solely for the purpose of receiving information about prospective employees as authorized by IC 5-14-1.5-6.1B5. All right, we're going to start with fire department business.
Okay, good evening. We're going to operational statistics. Looks like 48% of our call volume in the city and was fire, rescue, EMS. That's not all that surprising. About half of our calls come from that area.
Oh, pardon me, are we going to show your slides?
That would be great if we could.
Nicole, do you have those?
with the Zoom meetings, we hadn't been doing the slides.
Oh, I thought we had been.
No,
Okay.
it makes it harder for me to manage
Oh, okay.
all
I'm
of the
sorry.
folks in the public meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just do the best I can reading them. Okay, we had 558 calls in the city. We had 91 to Indiana University's campus. 48% of those were fire rescue or EMS calls. Out of those 91 calls to Indiana University, approximately 7 out of 10 or almost 70%, so 69% were rescue EMS calls to Indiana University to the campus. We did have a significant incident on January 28th of a house fire with a fatality that you may have read about. That fatality was not directly related to fire suppression. Response times and goals. We are 83%. We are on scene within 4 minutes of 83% of the time on those calls. Our goal is 9 out of 10 times or 90% within 4 minutes, and that's our first arriving unit. We are on scene within 8 minutes, 96% of the time of incidents within the city limits, and that is 2 engines and a ladder truck. And our goal is 98% of the time. So we're real close there. For fire prevention and public engagement statistics, obviously, this has been greatly affected over the last 12, 13 months. Our inspection goal progress is really apparent. And then obviously the public engagement is coming from more of a social media stance. So we're kind of working on that for Instagram and Facebook and social media posts. So we're kind of depending on that at this point. We think that we're hopeful that by summertime or maybe this fall, we can kind of get out of that as the nation gets out of this terrible disease with the pandemic. So training and education. We didn't meet our goal for this past month, but I would like to remind the board that we are down 13 firefighters right now. We look to bring on those 13 in the next month. So we're looking at a recruit academy starting April 5th with between 11 and 13 firefighters. We are going to have a process for one of our inspectors. It will be out, I believe, sometime this week, posted for internal and external candidates. So, and then doesn't look like we have any letters of appreciation that I'm seeing on my sheets anyway.
Mhm.
We do have, and I don't have the agenda right in front of me, but we do have 3 promotions. For the
Yes.
board.
Wonderful. Do you want to talk about the candidates before we vote?
Yeah, I can. I've worked with all 3 of these captains candidates, several of them for a number of years now. All of them are outstanding candidates for the captain's position. A captain is essentially in charge of the station, in charge of those companies, an engine company or a ladder company. And it really does all start with that person in that management position or that officer position. The company officer is one of the most important positions in the fire service. So we think that Ron Nebel Jr., James Teague, and Stephen Weaver will all be great candidates and future captains for the department.
Wonderful. Can I get a motion to promote Ron Nibel Jr. to the rank of captain effective March 11th, 2021?
Yes, I move that we promote Ron Nibel Jr. to the rank of captain effective March 11th, 2021.
And I second.
All right, I have a motion from Luis and a second from Shruti. Kim,
Yes.
Luis,
Yes,
Shruti,
Yes.
All right. Can I get a motion to promote James Teague to the rank of captain effective March 26th, 2021?
happy to do it. I move that we promote James Teague to the rank of captain effective March 26, 2021.
Can we get a second?
Oh, I seconded it. And am I not?
Oh, you did? You were muted, I think. Yeah.
Can you not hear me, or is this volume?
Can now.
Great.
all right, I have a motion from Luis and a second from Shruti. Kim,
Yes.
Luis,
Yes,
Shruti,
Yes.
Can I get a motion to promote Stephen Weaver to the rank of captain effective March 28th, 2021?
I
move-
move. Sorry,
okay,
go ahead.
you go.
I move for the promotion of Stephen Weaver. And can you tell me the date again? It was
March 28th.
as of March 28th, 2021.
I second.
all right, I have a motion from Shruti and a second from Luis. Kim,
Yes.
Luis,
Yes,
Shruti,
Yes.
All right. We're moving to fire department business, general business.
Thank you, board, for that approval of the captain's promotions. General business, some of the things that we've been participating in to facilitate or at least our community coming back from this disease is we've been going around the last 2.5 weeks with homebound folks who have over the last year basically not been able to get out of their house. We've been doing vaccinations, mobile, about 6 per unit, and we've been doing that weekly now. So something that we're trying to do, we're training our department-wide. This is obviously a marathon. That's not something that is going to, this is not a sprint. But over the next several months, we're going to be facilitating and administering vaccinations as the governor order let EMTs do that and we're jumping in, and we're going to do our part to do the best we can, especially for those folks who can't get out. So really rewarding, really eye-opening. We had one of the grandparents hadn't seen their grandkids in almost a year, and they feel like they got some sort of freedom, to do that now. And so it is really, really a special time also. So that's really general business. Like I did say, we are 13 fire positions down. We could be, depending on whether it's an internal or external hire for the fire inspection position. But we plan on being, by July, 110 are fully staffed department-wide, which will be the first time in nearly 5 years that that's happened. So that's all I have for general business.
Excellent. And purchases, expenditures, and procurements, anything we should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, we're going to have a push-in ceremony. I believe it's April 1st. We'll have email contact for you guys on that. It is for our newest ladder truck. It is here in town. We're currently putting equipment on it. We're going to train our folks so everybody can operate it. But that's about $1.25 million, and that you'll see that invoice, that purchase come across as soon as we put it in service. Then we will intend on paying for it. It did take about 400 days to make it. They are handmade. Literally every part of that fire or that ladder truck is handmade. You'll also see about $60,000 in fire gear. So it's going to be pants and coats that we'll buy about approximately 22 sets of pants and coats. Like I said, we do have 13 that we are fitting. The other thing that we're looking to do is with our newest firefighters is offer them the vaccination as well. So they're inoculated, and we can move one step further, in the process of inoculating our entire department as those opportunities come. So that's
inoculation yourself, the EMTs. Then?
Yeah. We actually there was an extra dose that was in that we were able to when we were going out mobile, and we actually were able to inoculate one of our firefighters who's been waiting for that. They've been waiting for the Johnson & Johnson, the one shot. That's the other thing with the homebound folks working with the Department of Health. We were taking advantage of the Johnson & Johnson, the one shot, so we don't have to return. So that they're, in 2 weeks, they're fully vaccinated.
Right. Great. All right.
That's all.
Personnel issues up a couple of notches there. So
personnel. We have, I believe, 3 out on light duty currently. We just did have 1 return to full duty. But as our department, our median age is around 48 years old. It's just one of those things that we have to deal with. It's a tough job when you're doing it.
Yeah.
And so we have a few people that are injured. It's usually we're actually looking to piggyback on what the police department's doing with. I believe they have a physical therapist that they're working with, and we're kind of looking into that as well. So to help with those injuries and things like that, recurring injuries. Yeah.
Any other?
Otherwise, that's it for personnel.
Okay, great. And obviously, we approve the other 3.
Okay.
Bumped it up a little bit. All right. Moving on to police department business.
Training and statistics. Looks like we had about 3,000 calls for service in the month of February. It was down just under 50 from the month of January. But you can tell from the bar graph that we are down significantly from those same months in 2020. So the decline in calls for service related to COVID continues. All of the other categories, for the most part, are pretty level from month to month. No significant increases in any of those. It looks as if adult arrests were down slightly even over January, but again, you can tell from the bar graph that we are down significantly from pre-COVID circumstances. Juvenile referrals were up a little bit over the month of January. I don't know if that was one specific case or I can't really attribute that to anything specifically. Domestic violence cases, again, we continue to see somewhat of a decline, clearly over last year, but even over last month, we had a slight decline there as well. UCR hate crimes, it is not a reporting quarter, so therefore we have nothing for that category, which brings us to the kind of the narrative portion, if you will, of the stats. Crime trends, major cases, an uptick in catalytic converter thefts. We are not unique in this area. There are a number of communities that have suffered as a result of this. Many times it is box trucks and things like that with companies that get hit simply because of the precious metals within those catalytic converters are pretty lucrative for those at scrap yards and that type of thing. Training, 1,056 hours. We had 9 officers and 2 records clerks actually attend crisis intervention training. We also had 29 officers participate in the mandatory department training, which I believe the chief provided you with all of the information, not only on the mandatory department training, kind of those core classes, but also enlightened you as to what we had scheduled for the rest of the year, or at least through some part of the year in ongoing training for the department. We also had 8 officers attend mental health first aid training. So again, significant investment in crisis intervention and mental health first aid and that type of thing. Community engagement, again.
Oh, quick question.
Sure.
I wanna get- who did the mental health first aid training?
I don't have that accessible right now. I don't recall if it was someone in-house, perhaps Melissa. I
Joe,
know that
excuse me.
Melissa helped with much of that, our social worker. So I did have names and companies attached to the information from last month. So I'm sorry, I don't have that as a carryover. But I think Ryan started to say, or shake his head, yes, that Melissa was involved with that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to chime in. That would be Melissa, Lieutenant Lucas Tate, and Detective Kevin Frank are the primary officers that have been trained in that and that put the class on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Community engagement, unfortunately, no events and nothing scheduled. We would love to get more into that as things ease. I think the chief has mentioned the possibility of us using Switchyard Station, our substation there, as a place where we may start hosting events once we are able to actually get back together again. Police social worker, total number of referrals, 26, 238 contacts, and you can see the summary of what Melissa calls wins over the course of the month. And then neighborhood resource specialists, 58 calls for service, and you can see the variety of things that they respond to.
What does Melissa call it?
Melissa calls those wins, W-I-N-S, as far as accomplishments with those contacts and accomplishments that she has from month to month.
Got it.
Deputy Chief, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So I was listening to a podcast on things, and it was about police and how the things we ask police to do. And we've talked about this before, how if anything good comes out of this moment, is to rethink what we ask all of you to do, police and fire, and some things just don't make sense. But this podcast it's This American Life, when it was about, there was a squirrel in somebody's attic, and they called, and the police, they're like, well, we don't do squirrels in attics. But they show up, and next thing you know, the police guy is in the house trying to get the squirrel out of the attic. And it was a disaster. It was funny. It's supposed to be funny. I didn't find it funny, but it was intended as funny. And I say that only to say, as I see the neighborhood resource specialist, and I am encouraged. I remember when we started years ago, and it makes sense to me. So then the question is, as we see those, I mean, see all the things you're putting on there. I saw animal, and I thought squirrel. Because why the heck are police dealing with animals, right? That doesn't. So I'm wondering, for those 58 calls, I don't want to say police because they're part of our force, the resource specialists, but what can they resolve these usually by themselves?
That would be the goal, in that we are sending a civilian representative of the department to take care of those types of calls that are not necessarily police related, but result in a phone call to the police department. Keep in mind that, much as we've talked about previously, who else are you going to call at 3 o'clock in the morning when you have a problem? There are not your normal city service agencies or even your social service agencies open. So, when in doubt, call the police. And you mentioned the squirrel story. I can tell you, do we go to animal calls in the middle of the night? Yes. I have personally been on, calls from co-eds when they've had a bat in their residence. And they're all freaked out because this bat keeps flying around, and, there is some expectation that we try to do something about it. But again, who else are you going to call? And we have essentially become the default or safety net for all of those categories that can't be answered in the middle of the night or the early morning hours. So, so again, what this is an effort to try to meet the need of the community, but doing it with civilian employees rather than tying up the limited resources of sworn police officers to take those.
So quickly follow up. Are they available 24/7, the neighborhood resource specialists? No. So those 3 o'clock bat calls, they can't do those.
Batman comes instead.
Who are you going to call? You said, I thought Ghostbusters, but that's
Ghostbusters,
me.
yeah.
Maybe I'm old. Wow. Okay. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question as well, and thank you for that information. I was looking at the section where you have the chart with the domestic violence cases between 2020 and 2021.
Yes.
And so sort of similarly to Luis, I've been seeing a lot of information about how domestic violence cases and calls have been spiking during the pandemic, both sort of nationwide and, and globally. And I think it's really interesting that there's a different pattern here. And I know earlier you mentioned that there's the COVID related drop actually in calls. And I was wondering if you had any sort of thoughts on whether this is different than what might be happening in Indiana generally or elsewhere, and if you have any sort of thoughts about why calls might be dropping.
I don't, and I think we've looked at this before, prior to your involvement with the board, because our belief was pretty much the same, that, much like around the holidays, sometimes too much togetherness is not a good thing. And, it sometimes results in, but we honestly have not really seen that with COVID restrictions, much like we thought we would. I think many of us, based on our experience with what we've seen around the holidays, kind of expected an increase in domestic violence situations, but the data did not necessarily bear that out. And I don't have an answer for that. I really don't. But it defies kind of what we thought would happen. And if any of my colleagues want to jump in, feel free. But again, I think we were all kind of surprised that as time together increased, that those numbers did not go up. We did not see the spike that we would have anticipated.
Good question.
Much for that information. And I actually had another question, but I know you'd invited your colleagues to jump in with. I didn't want to interrupt that if anyone was going to.
Oh, go ahead.
It appears they're as baffled as I am. So.
Okay. Great. Well, on the same page, you also have updates on hate crimes reports. And as I'm sure you're getting the same, I've been getting a lot of questions in the wake of what happened in Atlanta about how hate crimes are recorded and reported. And Chris actually gave me a great explanation earlier, but I was wondering, I think it would be helpful perhaps for the people who are listening and just the general public if you could maybe briefly describe what kind of recording and reporting you do and how that differs perhaps from the Human Rights Commission.
Joe, I'll take this one.
Thank you, Chief.
So Indiana's hate crime law is not very strong, but we use other Indiana statutes in order to pursue criminal investigations on anything that might be perceived as a hate crime. And so Indiana statute requires us to report to a database all hate crime information. Not very many law enforcement agencies do that. We do, and we work closely with the Human Rights Commission, where we share information with them. And if they have information that rises, excuse me, to the level of a criminal investigation, they share that information with us as well, so that we can investigate that. We take those very seriously. We investigate them and try to find charges that can be filed, but filing a specific hate crime charge doesn't usually happen because Indiana's hate crime laws are so weak. But we can find other state charges to use to file in those investigations.
Thank you. And could you also maybe clarify, this was something that Chris had explained to me also, but I think it's nice to hear it from you, just the differences between the reports that you collect and the ones that the Human Rights Commission collects?
So ours are usually criminal in nature. The Human Rights Commission is much broader in what they collect because they don't have the criminal investigative resources that we have. So they can investigate a lot of other things. And we also refer things to them also. If we get those complaints that don't really kind of fall in the realm of a police investigation, we can refer those to the Human Rights Commission for them to investigate.
Thank you very much. I just thought it would be helpful to share that information.
Sure. Thank you, Shruti. All right, letters of appreciation and commendation.
We had one. This would be for Lieutenant Williams, Mick Williams, officers Kyle Thomas, Brian Warner, Trevor Sager, and Zach Weisheidt. This was filed with Captain Oldham by Deputy James Qualters of the Sheriff's Department. This is regarding an arrest that took place in the 100 block of South Pete Ellis Drive. There was an individual who was known to be involved in vehicle thefts. Apparently BPD had one that morning. It was located in the 100 block of South Pete Ellis Drive by Deputy Qualters, who then summoned BPD officers. And when everybody got there, they were able to determine what apartment this individual was in. And I believe after being allowed entry inside, they found this individual hiding in a closet. He was also wanted on multiple warrants. Apparently he had been released by the court to go to treatment, and he never showed up for treatment. So there were a number of warrants for him, not only for failure to appear, but also for other criminal activity. But the deputy simply wanted Captain Oldham to know about how well both agencies work together to get this one individual into custody and to try to bring a stop to some of the criminal activity that is being involved in. So that event happened on February 24th of this year. So that's it.
All right, thank you. General business.
Yeah, I wanted to take this time under the general business to kind of explain how we do welfare checks. There's been some attention paid on a particular welfare check that we did on an individual who later died from a medical condition. Back in December, we had gotten a call on an individual that was on a park bench outside of Seminary Park. We had checked on that individual a couple of different times, and then later on in the morning, he passed away from, he had some heart conditions that was the ultimate cause of death. There was some criticism that was leveled at the police department that we didn't do enough. This particular individual we are quite familiar with. We have checked on him 20 plus times in the past year from calls that we had received. He did not like to interact with the police. He actually didn't like to interact with very many people at all and just wanted to be left alone. And so there was some videos that were released of the encounter that people questioned on whether or not the officers did enough. So it gets back to, you know, how far the police should go. We were quite familiar with this individual. We knew that he did not like to have interaction with the police, let alone other people as well. And so the officers checked, made sure that he was still breathing, which they did do. It's difficult to see some of the stuff on the body cam video because they are focused on a certain area and they don't always gather everything that people think they should. But we get 5,000 plus welfare check calls a year to check on people. Again, you know, it was Luis, you brought up earlier, what role does the police department have in a lot of different things? And this is another one of those situations where we've kind of assumed these calls where we check on people. And so again, there was some discussions about that, you know, we didn't do enough. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention to see if the board had any questions that I might be able to answer on how we do welfare checks. Again, we do roughly 5,000 of these a year. And some of the people we are familiar with, and we don't spend a lot of time because we just check to make sure they're okay and then move on. And others that we may not be familiar with, we might spend a little bit more time with. So I wanted to just bring this up in case any of you had any questions about that.
Yeah, I was interested in knowing what your procedure, your written procedures and protocol is for that and how you train for that.
So we don't have any procedures because every one of them are different, and it would be impossible for us to write a procedure on how you respond to those types of calls. The Indiana Law Enforcement Academy does not train on that because, again, the types of calls that we get are so varied, it would be very difficult to put in writing how you're supposed to respond. I was asked if I saw any problems with the way the officers handled that welfare check, and I did not because they were familiar with the gentleman. They did check to see if he was breathing, and he was. And so knowing that he did not like to interact with the police, their brief encounter, I believed, was sufficient to check to make sure he was still breathing, which they did do.
Chief, could I ask you, you say that you get up to 5,000 a year of these calls. How does that work? Like who, and that goes back to the question I asked or the point I made before. Who reaches out to you to ask for a check? Just private individuals?
Yeah, this particular call, it was somebody who was driving by and saw him laying on the ground. He did not have a tent. He had that bench was where he hung out a lot and he slept. He used a sleeping bag. There was some criticism that we took his tent a couple of weeks before that. He never had a tent. Our DROs frequently checked on him. and he never had possession of a tent. And so it's just random people who see things and call us. We had one earlier today where somebody was laying down next to the road, one of the on-ramps to Highway 6, Interstate 69. Someone called in and said, there's a guy laying on the road next to it. We went and we checked on him, but people call in for a variety of things because they're concerned about something and want us to check on it.
And they call 911. Is that what happens?
Most generally, they call 911, yes.
And then it gets to you. I mean, that's because as I read in the paper and I went to see the video and I read the transcript, it made me think the reason we have body cameras and police officers is right to corroborate that what happened. And it's a question of trust, right? And just to ensure that what we think happened or what it's said to have happened, in fact, did happen. So we go to these welfare checks all we have is the body cameras. So the idea that we're going to go help somebody in a situation when the person might not want help, or you have a body camera because of the issue of trust. So I don't get away from me. I don't want you near me. And it makes me think about why can't we, if this defund the police movement gets any place, things like this, it's not clear to me. Yeah, I don't know enough to know what you could have done differently. And I read all the reports and I read the things. I don't. Again, it's just unfortunate that.
It is. It's unfortunate that he passed away. This particular gentleman, though, on numerous occasions had declined offers of help from the police. As I stated, we had, I think, 20 plus prior checks on him. That's not including the checks that weren't even called out by DROs who were in the park checking other things, who just went up to him and talked to him. He did not like, he declined all of our offers in the past of assistance. Officers were very familiar with that. They were familiar with the fact that he did not want to be bothered usually. And so it was a very brief check to just see that he was still breathing, and he wasn't.
Well, just to be clear, I don't think it's unfortunate he passed away. I think it's tragic he passed away. I mean, my point is unfortunate is that we don't have a better way to handle questions like this one. The city having a team of social workers who could be deployed to do things that.
Well, but even I mean, we have social workers, and they've dealt with him before, and he again doesn't want those offers of assistance. He'd always declined those.
Yeah. I don't know. Thank you.
All righty. We're into purchases, expenditures, and procurements. Anything we should look out for?
You may have something on a remodel project that a restroom remodel project that we're doing at our training center, but it probably won't. I don't know if it'll be between this meeting and the next meeting or after the next meeting. So.
Okay. All right, open. Personnel issues.
I'll let Captain Pedigo update you on those.
All right, thanks. We are currently 13 officers short. However, within the next approximately week to week and a half, we'll be 15 officers short. One is going to Westfield Police Department on the 25th, and one is transferring to the fire department on the 4th. So that'll put us at a staffing level of 90 out of 105 sworn that we are allocated by the city. I do have 6 officers that should be starting hopefully April 19th. They were approved by the local pension board this past week, and I forwarded all their information to the state pension board for approval. So pending that there's no problems there, which I don't anticipate any, we should have 6 starting on the 19th. I also have 2 already certified officers that we discussed in the executive session that are currently They're just finishing up background investigations. And then I am going to test another certified female officer on hopefully April 2nd to begin the process with her as well. So trying to play some catch up, but right now we're pretty short.
So I also wanted to highlight, he told you the number of openings. I wanted to also highlight that we had 2 people who are on light duty. We have 4 people who are on long-term illness, and we have 3 people that are deployed to the military. So that is another 4, 7, 8, 9 people that we are down. So we currently are experiencing staffing levels that we had in 2004. And we have a over 20% increase in the number of calls for service that we are dealing with every year. So I just wanted to highlight you, or to alert you to the fact that we are extremely short on personnel, and that again we continue to make efforts to hire people, but that those efforts are coming up short every time we do it.
If I may ask,
oh, go ahead. Oh, I was going to ask if you're seeing unique factors during this period, this past year, that are impeding hiring.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we came off. We're still dealing with COVID. We're coming off of major police, shootings, defund the police movements, and the officers that we would try to go after aren't interested in being, the people we would try to go after aren't interested in being police officers and going through those types of situations. So, and it doesn't help then when we have current police officers who, for whatever reason, are tired of it or whatever and are retiring. And so it just makes it extremely difficult to recruit and retain good people to be police officers here. Mm-hmm. So what that means for us is at some point, I probably will have to have conversations with the mayor about what types of things we will no longer respond to, because we just don't have the resources to do that.
Thank you for that insight. Luis?
Yeah, so then that, as Deputy Chief Wachell was talking about the 13 vacancies, and then now we have another 13, that is a magic number, it appears, of the moment. That's a lot of people. And then 13 plus 9, that's even, that's a big number, as you said. And it made me think about, what is it about our region? I don't remember, I know COVID is part of it, but and Chief Dekoff, what you said makes sense too in reference to the police, but then when Five's also having so many openings, it makes me wonder about Monroe County, Bloomington, and how we're going after people. And I know I'm not placing blame at all, but rather maybe the other places are doing better than we are. And so I thought that's what you were going to say, in fact, when you said I'm going to have to talk to the mayor. I know what you said makes more sense. We'll have tough conversations, but there's another conversation about what we need to be doing, perhaps, to recruit people.
Last week, the mayor announced an incentive program of take-home cars and housing incentives to try to encourage people to seek employment here and to live in the city. That's one way, but there are agencies that are paying more than we're currently paying, and that's what people are going for. So. Mm-hmm.
That's what I meant. Things like that. There's something it's not. These things are subject to markets, and markets are quite strong. And there's negative and positive ways by which people decide to behave. And I don't know what we can do. I'm no expert here, but that's a conversation we're going to have. It looks like, as a community, because 13 and 13, that's a lot of people.
Yes.
Too many, in fact, I would say. But
it creates dangerous situations, is what it does.
Right. Agreed. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the hiring of the 2 new candidates, can I get a motion to extend a conditional offer of employment as a probationary officer to Daniel Bradburn, contingent upon successfully completing the remaining steps in the hiring process.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Luis and a second from Shruti. Kim?
Yes.
Luis?
Yes.
Shruti?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to extend the conditional offer of employment as a probationary officer to Cameron Wells, contingent upon successfully completing the remaining steps in the hiring process?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Shruti and a second from Luis. Kim?
Yes.
Luis?
Yes.
Shruti?
Yes.
All right, moving on to old business. Do we have any old business?
We
No.
do not.
Okay. Search ARV deployment reports.
We had none.
New business. Okay. We're to the petitions and communications section of the agenda, and we welcome comment here with a limit of 3 minutes per person. And if you could raise your hand digitally, and Nicole will let you in or let your microphone be heard.
And you can now also indicate in the chat that you would like to provide comment.
Thank you. All right, it appears we do not have any public comments. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned.